Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you joining us from around the world. On behalf of the Value Use and Copyright Commission of the International Federation of Broadcast Archives, Viert-IFTA, I would like to welcome you to this online panel on ethical dilemmas in broadcast archives. I'm Louise Brock, the chair of the commission. The discussion began at the Viert-IFTA World Conference in Rome in October last year, and it continues today with 5 experts from Brazil, Norway, the Netherlands, Austria, and Israel. We have also launched a survey on ethical workflows in your own archives, and we would greatly appreciate it if you could complete it if you have not already done so. We have the chat is open throughout the session, so please use it for your questions. If we can't address all of them live, our experts will respond afterwards. This session will be recorded and published online afterwards. It is now my pleasure to hand over to today's moderator, Macey, lead curator at the BBC Archives in the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Louise, and hello, everyone. As Louise said, this is a continuation of a conversation that began in Rome, but today we're going to explore one of the most challenging and important questions facing archives today. How do we handle historical content that may no longer align with contemporary values? We're going to be considering what we actually do inside archives when ethics, access, content, law, and audience expectations collide. We have 5 panelists working in very different broadcasting and archival environments, which is exactly what makes this discussion so valuable. I'll be keeping us to time as much as possible, but please feel free to respond to each other. So let's get quickly to the discussion. I've asked each panelist to introduce themselves in 1 minute or less. So tell us who you are, where you work, and the ethical challenge you deal with most often. Let's start with Anne.
Hi everyone, I'm Anne, a media archivist at NRK in Oslo. My job is to maximize the value of our historical archive for today's audience. When viewing past content through today's lens, we mostly face 2 ethical dilemmas: outdated humor and personal histories. Contextualizing humor is the easiest part, but protecting personal histories is our greatest challenge. People who consented into fleeting broadcasts decades ago never imagined being permanently searchable on the internet today.
Thank you. Maartje.
Hi, everyone. I work as a copyright lawyer at the Institute for Sound and Vision in the Netherlands. I have been dealing with some collections of which the publication could be unethical. I'm also working on a list of ethical considerations anyone could use to determine whether or not to publish a collection. And my colleagues are currently working on how to handle updates in metadata based on new insights.
Thank you very much. Michael.
Hello, my name is Vielhaber, and on the 1st of July of this year, I will be working for the Austrian Broadcasting Corporation, ORF, for 30 years. And as we all know, once a media archivist, always a media archivist, although on very different levels of responsibility over time. For today's session, I believe the 2 aspects of my work are particularly relevant. The first one is my role in content management within the production environment of the Austrian television news Zeit im Bild, loosely translated as time in the picture. In that context, I contribute archive material, mostly not older than a couple of weeks or months, that ought to be representative of a situation or a news content. And that is one piece of work that comes with one or the other dilemma. And the second aspect is that's relevant for the discussion today is me coordinating the social media environment that ORF Archive is in on various distribution channels like YouTube, Instagram, or Facebook.
Thank you very much. Billy.
Hi, I'm the head of the IPBC Archives, Radio and TV. I meet for ages 40 years I just celebrated in the public broadcast. I meet the questions with ethical use in the daily broadcast, what we decide to expose or not when we can choose, and the sales clips, censorship from the past, from many sensitivities. If it's young people or disabled or military censorship that we think that you can open now and broadcast, and of course the online publishing. So it meets me in many ways, like at least 3-4 directions, that we have some policy and some things you have to decide on the way.
Perfect. Thank you, Billy. Finally, Ligia.
Hi everyone, good morning. I'm Ligia. I work at TV Cultura, which is a public broadcaster linked to the Fundação Padre Anchieta, and this institution is affiliated to the government of the state of São Paulo. And at TV Cultura, I work only with the archive. I'm the head. I oversee the archive, which houses historical and audiovisual content. But we don't deal with publication of anything. So we just sell clips because we are also in charge of licensing, and then we have to deal with eventually with ethics. But we follow the code of ethics and conduct by Fundação Padre Anchieta. So we are very we know exactly what we are doing, and we also always try to publish and to protect the institution from any misuse of the information.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Okay, so let's move on to our first theme. We're going to be looking at ethics and law and how decisions are made. Maartje, I'd like to start with you, as you're uniquely placed here as a copyright lawyer. You have experience, as you mentioned, with publishing or not publishing controversial collections online. What would you say is the difference between making such a decision based on copyright or based on ethics?
Yeah, Mark. Well, when you make a decision to publish, for example, a controversial collection or another collection, purely based on copyright, you're just following the rules which are in the law. So you're checking all the aspects, such as when is the work published, who is the author still alive, was the work a film, is there a producer involved? You need all these aspects to assess whether the work is maybe in the public domain or you need a license to publish it. So this is all based on law, copyright law in this case. Ethics, I would say, are more or less thoughts on rules of conduct, how one should behave, how we should act, why this would be good or bad, or what the results of the act would be. Ethical rules can be integrated in law, such as criminal law, or be a part of fundamental rights, such as freedom of expression. But mostly they're the choice of groups or individuals. And I think that when you are making a decision to publish such a collection based on ethics, there's not really an existing rule to help you out with this. You have to decide this for yourself.
Okay. Maartje, can you give us maybe a concrete example of a collection you decided to publish, and on the flip side, when you decided not to publish, and why for both those reasons?
Yeah, I can. So in 2018, Sonovision decided to publish a very controversial film collection, actually, because it was the film collection of the National Socialist Movement. This was filmed during World War II, and we published this open and downloadable even online. So copyright-wise, this collection was in the public domain, so that's easy. We also, of course, did an assessment on privacy. So there were still people recognizable in the films, could be alive, they could invoke the GDPR. And in this case, privacy-wise, we weighed these privacy interests against our own rights of freedom of expression. And we said we should have this right prevail in this case. Then on ethics, we did an ethical check. We were thinking, okay, if we put this downloadable online, the content could be misused by people. But we were thinking about this with the Dutch network war collections. And yeah, we both considered that the chance that this would happen would relatively be small. Parts of the collection were already available online. Nothing really happened with this. So we thought we could do it. And we also said that the images itself are not like really horrible to see. It's propaganda. And we said, well, this is in the public interest to publish. For researchers, for people who want to see this, we knew that the researchers really wanted to download this, and we thought this is more important than privacy or ethical issues. So this one we published, but we also have another collection which we really don't want to publish. It's a scientific research collection, and you can see testing on animals and humans. And also this collection is in the public domain, but we during the ethical assessment, we said this is unethical to publish, because the images are really horrible for anyone, not just for children, but just for anyone, really horrible to watch. And maybe more importantly, this collection was never meant to be published. It was filmed by doctors to show to other doctors, to researchers just in their fields, in that hospital. And then we were also worried that, yeah, maybe people would do something with the content, make like really horrible cat memes with it or something. It was maybe quite likely. So we decided not to publish this collection.
Fascinating. Thank you so much. So thinking about who makes the decisions, I'm going to throw to Billy and Anne for this one. So Billy, who inside your organizations ultimately makes those decisions? And then how important do you think that those decisions are recorded so that the other staff members, future generations can revisit them later?
That's a good question, because it's not very well organized. We have like an ombudsman now that is responsible for ethics. Like I had a question for him yesterday about some ethical question about selling clip of some sensitive case, which is now in the news, and we should sell it. They wanted the clip. It's a woman that was raped. It's just like, and she doesn't want to give an interview because the commercial channel is going to interview the rapist, like so-called, he's not convicted. So we didn't know, should we give it? Because she doesn't want to be in the same program with him. So we had to call the ombudsman, and we should sell it because it's a historical archive. The interview she gave to us like 10 years ago when it happened, it's slow. So we did ask, and the conclusion was that we should sell it, but we should make sure that they don't take it out of context, that they don't put a sentence of her and a sentence of him, which she didn't want. So who are we to judge, So this is like a typical ethical question which comes with the sales, but it doesn't happen a lot. But at the archive, we have to be sensitive to what's happening. But usually it's we decide. We go to the ombudsman when we have like critic things. And if we think that it could be like major problem, like So we are writing down things, but there are no rules, written rules. It's interesting what you wrote, what you say, but there's a lot of discussions. Every project that we publish online, we discuss if it's like children with drugs, should we show it? Today they're grown-ups, they have children. Maybe it's very sensitive now to publish it, and they don't want it. We're not going to ask anyone. So we do have some set of rules in the archive, which what is like the level of sensitivity. So, and of course, like changing groups, like with the Arab society, the more conservative, we put online many nice things of villages. And then they came to us and said, look, they became more religious, and women that went, today they are grandmothers, and you show them without a headscarf, and now they don't want to take it off because it creates a problem. So we learn from that for the future. So there's no set of rules, but like we talk, and like in the archive, there's a lot of discussions about it and meetings. And when there are extreme things, then there's the ombudsman, the ethical ombudsman. But like Maartje said, it's like not like low things. It's more things that you have to be sensitive to the society you live in, to the changing rules, and to keep to respect the public in what you expose. And of course, when we serve to the news things every day, then you can choose if you show more extreme things, because we are choosing for them. So the inner talks, we have a lot of like small discussions every other week in the archive about these ethical things.
Thanks, Billy. Anne, throw to you for the same question as well.
Yeah, who ultimately decides it's a team effort, really. Curators, legal and ethical advisors, and the editorial staff all weigh in. But the final call always rests with the editorial leadership. And whatever we decide, we document it. We log it for the why for the future archivists, and we add internal metadata warnings to ensure restricted material is never accidentally republished or reused.
Fabulous. Thank you, Anne. Right, well, I've still got you, Anne. We'll move on to the next question. So you've had an online archive in NRK for many years. You faced many ethical dilemmas in that time, but you operate under the core principle that a public broadcaster should have a low threshold for publishing content and a high threshold for removing it. Can you explain a bit more about how this works in practice, those workflows, and how those principles have been met by the Norwegian audiences?
Yes, to answer that, our low threshold for publishing is rooted in our belief in society's right to history. Our baseline is to maximize access because we refuse to create a sanitized or varnished past. So, however, we also view this past content through a 2026 lens, where we must protect individuals who were young or vulnerable at the time of broadcast. And this is where our high threshold for removing content comes in. Instead of deleting history to solve an ethical dilemma, our primary workflow revolves around curation and contextualization. In terms of our workflow, this means combining technology with human curation. We sometimes explore tools like AI to quickly scan and flag potentially offensive language, but we always keep a human in the loop to evaluate the historical context. And these complex decisions are rarely made in isolation. It's a collaborative effort between curators, ethical advisors, and the editorial leadership. So our primary workflow revolves around curation and contextualization rather than removing content. When we publish, we add vital historical context such as the broadcast year, genre, and other background information. And in some cases, to protect individuals, we anonymize content by removing contributors' names on our public platforms. However, we strictly preserve the original data in our internal systems to maintain the integrity of the historical record. So, interestingly, time works both for and against us here. In some cases, contributors who previously declined publication have actually changed their minds decades later. And how the audience react to this, Over the years, we've seen a remarkable maturity develop, both within NRK and among the public. Because in the early days, our instinct was often to hide the past we were embarrassed by, but through exposure, we've learned to tolerate these uncomfortable truths because we recognize their historical value. And I have a recent example that proves this, because we published a 1977 radio drama by Kittermaster containing severe racial slurs, and a listener was deeply upset, stating, "This is not worthy of NRK in 2026. So we took her concern seriously and explained that the play was actually a satire designed to expose those exact prejudices. However, this interaction taught us a valuable lesson that we hadn't provided enough context up front. So once we updated the publication to clearly highlight the broadcast year and the satirical comedy, the misunderstanding vanished and the listener was ultimately grateful. It proved to us that context is everything, especially with satire. And if we provide the right context, the audience is more than mature enough to face an unvarnished history.
Fabulous. Thank you, Anne. So I'd like to open this out briefly because it's a fascinating topic. I'm going to throw it to Ligia and Michael for this one, if that's okay. So when institutions decide not to publish something, where do you both believe the ethical burden lies? Is that with the archive, with the contributors, or with the audiences? And it may be a permutation of each of those. Let's start with Ligia.
Well, I think the broadcaster is the primary ethical responsibility in this matter, because the archive decides not to publish or not to publish. Of course, this is going to impact in the audience, but the decision is from the broadcaster. So when content originally produced by the institution is later withheld from the public, the broadcaster is effectively censoring its own material. So, and this raises for us a broader question. Not only does it conflict with the role of a public broadcaster as TV Cultura and Fundação Padre Anchieta in a democratic society, it also counter to the principles set out in the Code of Ethics and Conduct of the Fundação Padre Anchieta. The Foundation's mission is explicit, including fostering individuals' critical development by providing access to education, knowledge, and culture. This mission fundamentally depends on access to information, which enables people to develop critical thinking skills, understanding historical context, and engage with diverse perspectives. Certain content may require contextualization, and this is, of course, very important. I think what Anne just said is really important to explain when it was produced, if you need any explanation for this different approach of a subject. But providing the context is the only thing that is very different from suppressing content. So we try not to suppress anything, but as I said before, the archive is not responsible for publishing in TV Cultura.
Thank you. Michael, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well.
Very interesting. I have a different opinion on that matter. I think in the case of the ORF, I believe that the ethical burden lies primarily with the archivists. However, the reasons for that vary considerably, depending on the perspective. From the perspective of someone working closely with newsroom operations, I know that archivists make editorial decisions every day and sometimes within a matter of seconds. In that environment, I'm effectively the person deciding whether certain material will be published or not, because other stakeholders, such as news anchors, managing editors, or producers, never get to see the content I choose to withhold. In practice, this means that archivists exercise significant gatekeeping power already in the newsroom. On the other hand, when working with platforms such as Instagram or TikTok, the selection process likewise remains mine. Yet the reasons behind those decisions are very different from newsroom context. On social media, my primary concern is to construct a narrative that works with the logic of the platform and its algorithms. As a result, the original editorial framing the historical moment, and the program context become heavily reduced and almost entirely absent. For me, both perspectives, the newsroom context and the social media context, demonstrate that archivists and archives already function as narrative systems shaped by selection, editorial framing, and increasingly by platform logic itself. That is why I think the ethical burden lies with the archive.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. Right, I'd like to move on to talk about metadata, which we're all more than aware of. So as we all know, legacy metadata often reflects the biases of the time it was created. And we often hear concerns from our sector and wider about with the fact that we're rewriting history when we change these metadata. Billy, I'd like to throw to you. So when you're putting in place updated descriptions, how would you balance the respectful modern language with the archival requirement to document the original and the original historical record, which may be offensive at times? How would you deal with that?
So we are, the main policy is to rewrite description when online publishing. That we always do, and we don't always leave the original and explain. We do change it, to make it easier to digest for the public. But it's very important on the MAM system, not on the other system for publishing. We keep two systems. That's your other questions. So there we keep the original and we put it in context and flag it. We will not erase it, of course, for research of academics and of course for producers, that they should see what and reporters which can look online on the data. Michael, they can also choose, and we always, apropos what you said before, Michael, because they can choose, and the reporter says, no, I want that, and I would choose not to give him that. So we are gatekeepers here because they have to go through the archive because of copyrights merge. They have to check with us. So they always check if they want it or not. And then we interfere and say, we don't think it's good there isn't some ethical question here, and we propose that, or they can convince us. But so basically on the system, we flag and we leave and explain it. So for future generations, from our point of view, I don't know what archivists will think about our remarks in 10, 20, or 30 years. But online publishing, we completely edit it. We don't leave the original offensive language, or, we change it.
So Billy, thinking about the technical side of that metadata in practice, you've touched upon that briefly. Would you say you prefer a single record with different historical layers, or are there separate public and private finding aids that you use?
Are completely different. We keep it different. I think it's, I don't think the public should go into our system. There is a problem because we don't access our metadata, because you have to do a lot of editing on it. So we don't access it anyhow. So on the publishing, for publishing, we have a different DAM. So it's two systems. It's a lot of work for us. And it takes a lot of work for curating for the publishing. But it's two different systems, and it's not from the same company. That it's different. This MAM and this DAM is different operators with, but basically it's not big difference. But still, it's a lot of headache for us because the archive is doing both things, and I think you should keep different systems and not one system. And there are even layers within the MAM, the inner MAM in the organization. But because there are things we don't want everyone to see, because we have some censorship on some sensitive things that they demand from us. We have a lot of military things that we broadcast, and sometimes they film things that they wanted us to erase, and we had a discuss. We did not agree to that, so we do keep it, but we hide it from the rest of the organ. The journalist can't see it, and if they want something, we check through for them. So even there, we have these are the layers that we have, but they can know that it exists without seeing it. But it's two different systems, of course. And we keep the old metadata systems. When we digitized all the analog system, we still keep that, not to lose, because we have many copies, and it's easier to look at the different versions in the old metadata system. So when we rewrite and put contextualize, we have to go through the old system and the new MAM system. So it's a lot of work, but it pays off when you do a lot of researches in short time. So we do that. I don't know if the best solution, but that's how we chose to do it.
It's the one you have. Good. Okay, so on a similar theme, I'd like to turn to the idea archives contain material that involve people or communities or audiences that may feel marginalized, they may feel misrepresented, they may be at risk of harm through the reuse of this content. Maartje, I'd like to come to you. At Sound and Vision, you've actively involved teams and various communities in redescribing collections, haven't you? So can you tell us more about that, and particularly how Sound and Vision deal with metadata?
Yeah, I can. Sonovision is currently redescribing some collections, our colonial collections, regarding Indonesia, Suriname, the Dutch Antilles, and we have these new descriptions now, and they are actually based on information that we received from the community itself. So that is something new that we do, because first we had the media manager to do the description, but now we describe it together with the community. So, for example, our collections that involve Suriname, they are being described by people from Suriname. Same goes for our Muslim archive. It's being described by Moroccan people who know about this collection, and we don't. And we're actually also paying them to help us out. We added in our system a new descriptive field, which is called historical archival metadata. We show that we have an old and a new description. They're both still available in the archive. We only add information. We don't delete anything. We have this as a new workflow now.
Fabulous. And so what would you say was the biggest change internally when those descriptions stopped being something the archivists did about the communities, but it's something they did with them instead?
Yeah. Well, I actually think that it's really great, because those communities are being held as experts, and they're being compensated for their knowledge. We have special funds to pay them. And our product manager, research and heritage, she is now discussing this with our archival department. Because we have now these new keywords, we received them from the communities, and we made this change that first the media manager and the metadata management team, they were describing and deciding what to use, what to change, and now we're running this pilot project where we change this into the media manager together with the community who is making this decision. So that's really like a significant shift in our working methods.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, I'd like to move to Michael next, because I'd be interested to focus more on the social media news angle on this, Michael. So it would seem that ethical dilemmas strengthen, intensify when archive materials reused in television news, both short form news and social media as well? Would you say there's any content you would reuse in a long form news content but refuse to publish as a clip on social media? And why would that be?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Because there is a fundamental difference between long form journalistic reuse and short form social media redistribution. The reuse of audiovisual archive material in long form news is usually trying to explain, to contextualize, to enable an audience to understand complex social, political, or demographic realities. In these settings, individuals appear in archival footage can be experienced as representative of a generation, or a social group, or even of as agents of a social change, if you will, provided by the material provided the material is selected carefully, of course. Social media environment functions totally differently. The logic of the platform often prioritizes immediacy, emotional reactions, and entertainment values, and of course, algorithmic engagement. And as a result, statements, gestures, or moments that were originally embedded within serious journalistic framework can easily be reduced to something amusing, ironic, meme-like, maybe just a joke. That often creates an ethical dilemma for me, because there is material I would absolutely consider appropriate for a long-form news context, yet would avoid publishing on isolated social media clips. The key question is always, I find myself asking myself, would I be comfortable if I or someone close to me were turned into a kind of meme for entertainment 20 years from now?
Yeah.
And that's more or less the question, because most people are likely to feel positively when they appear as an ambassador for something, or as someone representative of something on the news. Significantly fewer people like to see themselves as a meme on social media, and I think that's the big difference.
Fabulous, thank you. And Michael, at ORF, you were a speaker on a panel for an inclusive training program, I think you mentioned, and you asked the participants how they wanted to be seen in the daily news, which sounds fascinating. Can you just tell us more about how that came about and what the findings were?
Actually, for quite some time, we've been working on a project called New Pictures, where we're trying to be quotable, not only in the text, in the audio part, but also in the pictures. That what people see as representative on the news is in fact representative. And we always had a huge problem with describing or finding representative content of people with physical and intellectual disabilities, because the archive content usually comes from human interest stories about, I don't know, Sammy, who is never getting the bus because he can't get into the bus with his wheelchair, and then you see this boy looking sadly as the bus is leaving. And that's a problem, because you're painting a picture that is more or less always the same, that they are in a position of a victim, which they see themselves not, what I experienced in this conference. And first of all, I thought, okay, I need to talk to NGOs and maybe academia, what is representative. But the shorter way was, simply speaking, asking them, how would you like to be seen on television news? And they said, well, I have friends. I like to go out. I like to have a beer. I like to go to the pub. I love fixing cars. I love reading. And they said, would you be willing that to participate in filming that and being reused for the news? And they were really proud, and it was a marvelous project. Yeah, it really worked out marvelously.
And did their views change on that, the kind of ethical, outdated content that they were seeing?
Of course. the views have already changed. Like, for example, when we're talking about people with migration background, we know that the Muslima, the woman with the headscarf, is not representative for immigrants in Austria. But you can find it because you can type in headscarf. You can't type in German, which is the biggest migration group in Austria. And that's a problem because it's findable. So we had to make it easier and more convenient to find representative content that is actually representative for the group we're talking about.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, I'd like to move on to think about the ethical risks around selling and licensing of content. So Ligia, I'm going to come to you. You've been working with rights in TV Cultura and previously in Cinematica Brasileira in Brazil for many years, and TV Cultura produces educational and cultural content. So I'd like to ask, when content carries those ethical risks, do you ever refuse to sell it? Or do you simply transfer the responsibility with some sort of disclaimer that says there could be problems with that content if it's used?
Well, in my experience, I've been at TV Cultura for 5 years now. We never denied a licensing request based on the content itself. As mentioned, the Code of Ethics and Conduct of Fundação Padre Anchieta is very clear on this point. So it emphasizes values such as ethics, transparency, freedom of expression, and defense of democracy. These principles, in my view, support the idea that a public broadcaster should not restrict access to its content. Our role when licensing material is not to prevent its use, but to ensure its use responsibly and within a clear legal framework. This is especially important for sensitive content, particularly material involving children or indigenous communities, which is protected under specific Brazilian legislation. In these cases, we apply stricter safeguards to ensure respect for images' rights and personal dignity. To manage risk, we follow a simple process. Requesters must complete a form describing purpose, subject, and scope of their project. And this gives us enough context to assess the intended use and to decide if we need more information or not. And if we need, we ask for more information to see if it's really something that can put these images into out of context, so completely out of context. So our license agreements are also quite explicit. They assign full responsibility for use of the licensee and prohibit any association with unlawful, defamatory, discriminatory, or privacy violating contexts. Everything is very, very reinforced in the license contract. It's also clear in the contracts that the material cannot be used in a way that implies endorsement by the broadcaster or the original program. Liability for any misuse rests entirely with the licensee. So it goes to the licensee at the end if we have any problem. And we had a recent case that I heard because we didn't hear it at TV Cultura, but we licensed material for a production company working on a documentary about the PCC. I don't know if you know what PCC is one of Brazil's largest criminal organizations. And someone from the PCC, we wonder because it was someone in the footage we sold, processed the production company, but we were not named on in the lawsuit. So it demonstrates that this well-structured licensing agreement protects the institution while still assuring access and transparency. Not everyone is happy about that, but and feel comfortable with it. But we think it's still important to give access. It was a biography, and we also have a law that protects all biographies from, every information can be available if it's for this purpose. So
thank you.
We try not to keep information.
Sure. Billy, did you want to add? Sorry, I think I might cut you off.
No, just it's the example I gave in the beginning of what we just had
Yes.
yesterday, because we do have a stand, but like as a woman, I have a stand, and because I coincide with this with the other woman, but the ombudsman of the ethics said, okay, it is sensitive, and you're right, because she didn't want to give an interview to this. She didn't want to be part of this interview with that program. And like, we are breaking her trust with us because it was a long interview she gave to our correspondent, and we're giving it. So like, we make her be part of a program she doesn't want to be. So it's an ethical question here. But like you say, Ligia, you have to sell the footage because this is what journalists do, and between companies, you do that. So we do have the legal license fee, and they shouldn't take it out of context, and any liability is on them. But okay, I'm protected here, and we will do it, and they have to give it. But I don't feel comfortable with it. I think it's a big ethical question, but there is a limit to where we should impose our moral, because it's not emotional. It's a moral feeling and attitude, but we gave it. I don't feel comfortable with it, but it's things you do. If she would like, she would sue, and she will have to sue them. But I think it will also hurt you, because next time people will not give you interview if you're. It's complicated because we are selling footage. So when you decide to, and who am I to decide who to give it to? It's like, I don't know. Maartje can maybe have. I want to know what you think.
I'm sorry, just if I can just
Yeah, what do
I
you
agree
think?
with you. It's not really easy. It's not always easy, and we have lots of discussion within the archive and sometimes with the legal department. But at the end, I think people may not be comfortable. And it depends on I think it depends on the subject. It depends on the histories being told. It's not always. It's very different. The case you told and the case I told, they are very different things. So it's telling stories and showing what's really happening. And sometimes the information you have is really important to explain what's happening. So I agree with you. It's very difficult, but it's also difficult to say no, even if it's not comfortable.
Yeah, and should you say no, because it's also democratic to use the footage and in some other creation. So we come back to Maartje, the legal department, because we put it in a frame that we shouldn't take it out of context and all this.
Yeah, that's how it works at Sonovision as well. If the content is from the broadcasters, they decide whether to sell it, and that depends on the context the footage is being placed in, and they are deciding.
Cases they say no.
Sometimes they say no, yes, because they have already had complaints. In the Netherlands, we also have portrait rights, so people can say I don't want to be, I don't want to have this material published again, so we block it. It cannot be reused. So we have this whole system here in the archive for this, and I think, the owner decides, I would say, or the owner or the rights holder. Because in some cases, the material is in the public domain, and Sonovision owns the collection. So in that case, I would say that Sonovision decides whether to publish.
Great, thank you very much. Just conscious of time, there's a couple more areas I'd like to cover off as well, but I'd like to move on to the hot topic of AI across our sector. And as we know, it's being used for different purposes across our archives at the moment. And I'd like to come to you. You use AI to scan materials for offensive content. Could you tell us more about how that actually works in practice?
Yes, at NRK, like many large broadcasters, we sit on a massive historical archive where only a fraction is richly catalogued. So when we want to safely highlight this content for today's audience, manually reviewing every single broadcast is simply impossible. So this is where AI comes in. However, we don't just scan everything. We deliberately use AI on selected programs when we feel unsure. So we particularly focus on vintage comedy. Old humor is incredibly popular within our audience, but it's also where historical boundaries are more easily blurred, and we want to ensure we don't want to cross any ethical lines. So I want to stress that we treat AI strictly as a tool and never as an autonomous decision maker. From a technical and ethical standpoint, we rely on closed enterprise systems. So this is crucial because it guarantees that our sensitive archival data remains securely isolated. So how does the scanning actually work in practice? It is a step-by-step collaboration between technology and human curation. First, we use speech-to-text algorithms to transcribe the audio of our broadcasts. And second, we use the AI as an automated sensitivity reader to scan through these massive transcripts. The AI is trained to flag severe racial slurs or derogatory terms, and it pinpoints exactly where in the content the problematic language occurs. This does the heavy lifting and saves us countless of hours. But the most important part of this workflow is what happens after the AI flags something. Algorithms do not understand irony or satire or historical nuances. So if an AI scans the 1977 radio drama I mentioned earlier, it will flag the racial slurs, but it will completely fail to understand that the play is actually a satire aimed at exposing prejudice. So this is why keeping a human in the loop is absolutely essential. The AI points out to us the exact risks, but it takes an expert, a human archivist, to step in and evaluate the historical and social context.
Great, thank you very much. Exciting stuff. Maartje, you mentioned it earlier, but you said you've been working with the VUC Commission on a document which has been looking at ethical considerations about publication of different materials. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, this year I started working on such a document because I was thinking, yeah, we have been publishing, but we did it like we have been thinking about ethical considerations, but yeah, how many could there be? Could there be more maybe? Or what could you all consider? So yeah, I wanted to write something to put actually all the considerations I can think of in a list and publish this so other archives or people can use this as well. Some examples of those considerations could be like, are you publishing on an open platform for any age without a login? What is the possible audience? Is there any risk of reuse in a negative way? Is the collection culturally sensitive? Do you understand the content that you're publishing? Do you maybe need experts if you don't foresee the consequences of your publication? So it will be like a whole list of this. And I heard Ligia say that they have a code of ethics. So I would be interested to receive that one as well. And also I would like to share this list with other people so people can add as well. And we can make this whole list together actually. And what I would like to add to this as well is we have been talking during this panel about who decides to publish. I think that's an important question. I think in the archive there should be a vast team of people doing this. It shouldn't be random, like maybe this person this time or that person that time. It should be this team who can also build experience and to decide this. So you could think of a product manager, metadata specialist, a media manager, a curator, a lawyer. I even heard that there are ethical advisors. Yeah, that's superb, obviously. And I think that the decision you're finally making, that should be based on something, maybe your own guidelines or a policy or that list of considerations. And I think the decision should also be recorded in the archive, so anyone can see later on, maybe in 100 years, why this has been published at that time. And I would say that the goal of all this would be that this is going to be transparent and consistent. And I think that maybe, well, that's not always the case, not yet at least. So yeah, I would say that would be good to start with.
Thank you so much. Right, we're almost out of time, so we may not have time for questions, but I'd like to ask the panel one final quick question for each of you. So try and keep it as tight and as short as possible, please. So imagine an archivist are encountering your decisions 50 years from now. What is the one thing you hope they understand about why you contextualized, why you flagged, or why you restricted the materials the way you did? Let's go to Anne first.
I hope it's this one thing, that we kept our archives open to protect democracy. We refused to hide uncomfortable truths, trusting that an unfiltered cultural heritage is essential. We wanted to leave them an unvarnished past because that's the only way to foster critical understanding and to help future generations grow.
Fabulous, thank you. Billy?
Well, I hope that they will have some mercy on us, but they would see that we made a lot of efforts to respect our culture and try to keep guidelines and to explain and make it clear why we flag things. And I'm a bit worried that they will find some issues that we didn't manage to get and flag, and it will be completely unclear to them. So we're in a race, and the online publishing pushes us to deal with more footage, but I'm afraid we don't get everything.
Ligia, let's go to you.
I'm sorry, I have enormous noise here. I don't know if you can hear me properly.
No, it's fine. Yeah, we can hear you.
It's fine? Okay. Yeah. So I think, as Billy said, we probably are not going to be, our decisions are not going to be understood, not all of them, but I hope that they understand why we decided to publish and why in this context, at this moment, it was decided like this. So democracy, free of expression, critical, I think all this, once it's explained and why we did it, I hope it's like when we see other ancient images and we know why it was like that at this moment. So
perfect.
I hope it will be the same.
Let's go to Maartje and then Michael. Keep it as brief as possible, if that's okay.
I liked what Billy said about respect. I think that's also the reason why we add new information using the community itself, and we don't describe or contextualize footage we don't know what it is about.
Great, thank you, Michael.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would hope that they understand that our decisions to withhold content were not attempts to erase history, but attempts to preserve meaning and ethical standards.
Great. Okay, we're almost at time, so I just want to thank you all for your contributions today. I hope you'll agree this has been a fascinating and informative discussion about ethics as lived practice, not just abstract principles. I think we can agree it's shown how complex and essential ethical decision-making is in all of our archival work. I think we can also agree these dilemmas aren't going away, but hopefully by sharing these approaches, these challenges, we can move closer to a more responsible, a more reflective archival practice. So we didn't have time for questions, but if you have any questions, Louise, could participants contact the VUC Commission, and we'll answer them on the webpage after this session?
Yes, and actually we didn't have that many questions. We had one
Sure.
about the list Maartje is going to make about ethics, but it's upcoming work, so we will work on that, right, Maartje?
Yeah. And we are going to publish it when it's finished on the Fiat IFTA website, so everybody can take a look at it and use it. Yeah.
Great. And there's a final reminder that the VUC's survey on ethics and archives is ongoing, and our conversation continues beyond today as well. So, in the final minute, I'd like to say thank you to our panelists, Anne, Billy, Maartje, Michael, and Ligia, to Fiat IFTA, and to everyone who joined us today across many different time zones. Thank you all, and see you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.